in a time of lies, if you try to tell the truth, yeah, you're a criminal.
Yeah, if
you're a revolutionary or
it's
some
the
kind
truth.
of terrorist.
No, and anybody who talks about sovereign this or sovereign that, right on the list instantly.
When did saying I want to be a patriot turn into a bad thing? That's what I want to know.
I'll tell you when it turned into a bad thing the first time. Then it made a recovery. Now it's bad again. It was OKC, the bombing.
Mm-hmm.
They turned the word patriot into the dirtiest word in the English language within a week.
I know, but that didn't fly. That flew about as good as a lead balloon, okay? Because they tried to take Timothy McVeigh and say that he was part of the right-wing militia, and then when good reporters got to digging into the story, they found out that the real militia kicked him out for being too radical. They didn't want anything to do with him.
Correct.
And now, of course, we all know he's working for the government anyway. So it was just a provocateur, another false flag operation.
Was it you who knew the one journalist who was there at the execution that said that sheet was very slowly,
he was still breathing when they hauled him out.
Very slowly, still moving up and down. Yeah, he just went into a deep...
I think Timothy McVeigh is over in Tahiti, sitting on the beach with Ken Lay, sipping Mai Tais.
Something. Yeah.
And the thing is, I'm sure there's some of your listeners out there going, what? That's the craziest thing I ever heard.
No.
But wait a minute. We all know there is such a thing as the Federal Witness Protection Program.
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes,
and they can take you and they can give you even plastic surgery, or don't even need to do that. Just give you a new, perfectly credible and legitimate ID, send you off to another part of the country, and unless you give away the secret, nobody knows who you are. They think you're the new person.
Of course.
Now, we all know they can do this. So when somebody says, hey, top guys, they just announce that they died and they get a new identity and they just go on about their business.
So simple.
It's been done all throughout history, actually. Butch Cassidy's Sundance Kid. See, we were all told they got killed by the Bolivian army. They paid off the Bolivian army to say they got killed because they were seen and photographed in Hell's Acres here in Fort Worth, long after they supposedly were dead.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that? How about Jesse James, the dirty little coward that shot Mr. Howard?
Yeah.
That wasn't even Jesse James. Jesse James lived almost into the 50s. Okay,
well, I heard that.
But he got away with it because his friends, his relatives, everybody around Missouri, they all thought he was a good Confederate and a good guy. And so they all said, yeah, he got killed. Yeah, he got killed.
Yeah, he died of old age.
He died of old age, yeah. Because back then it was easy enough just to move to another part of the country, change your name, and nobody knew any difference unless you gave it away.
That's right.
Like John St. Helen did. Who's John St. Helen?
Who is John St. Helen?
Well, he's a guy that lived down in Glen Rose, Texas, back in the cowboy days, late 1800s, 1896, something like that, 1895, and ran a bar. And everybody thought he was kind of an odd duck, but he was a good-looking older guy. And when he had a little bit too much to drink, he'd get up and recite Shakespeare with this melodious voice,
John, what was his name again?
John St. Helen.
Oh.
Okay, so one time, though, he got real sick, and he thought he was going to die. So he called in a lawyer named Finus Blankenship.
I figured this out.
He told Finus Blankenship, I'm going to let you in on my secret, and he said, I'm actually John Wilkes Booth.
Yeah.
And he went to a little hidden place he had in the wall, and he pulled out a Derringer, and he said, that's the gun that I used to shoot Abraham Lincoln. And it was wrapped up in some newspapers of the Lincoln shooting, and I'll tell you what, I have tracked that for years. There's even been books written on it. The guy they killed in the barn was not John Wilkes Booth. And let me tell you how I got onto that story. I was working for the newspaper in Fort Worth, and a man called the newspaper and was asking about Booth. And, of course, I'm the oddball. I'm the reporter that covers the weird stuff, right?
Yeah.
So they put him in touch with me, and he wanted to know how much an autographed photo of John Wilkes Booth would be worth. And I said, well, I really don't know. I said, how'd you get and he said, well, I have one of those, what do they call them? carte de blanche, or not blanche, but carte de something. Anyway, it was kind of like a business card of those days, but it was a little printed photograph, right? And so I went out and visited him at his home, and sure enough, he had this old photograph of John Wilkes Booth, and it had John Wilkes Booth written across it in pencil. And I said, well, that's pretty interesting. I said, you'd have to get that validated. We'll have to go to some handwriting expert and find out if that is indeed his handwriting. I said, where'd you get that? And he said, my grandmother gave it to me. I said, well, where'd she get it? He said, oh, he gave it to her. I said, yeah, she was living at, I forget, I think it might have been Glen Rose, but somewhere here in North Texas. Oh. And he said, yeah, it was about 1882. And, of course, I said, wait, you don't know that he got killed in 1865? He said, no. She said she got it from him, and, and it's like the guy didn't even know. He didn't even know that Booth supposedly was killed just a few months after or within a few weeks of the Lincoln assassination. And so I went and had a handwriting expert check it, and they said, well, it's close enough. There's some variation, but not enough to say it's wrong. So it could be John Wilkes Booth, So that put me on the trail, and then I found out the story of George St. Helen, and now I find out that the real Booth, after he thought he got sick and confessed to this lawyer, he made a big mistake. He got better. Yeah. And so then he had told the secret. Now, I guess people started looking at him out of the corner of their eye because he quickly moved away. And this lawyer trailed him for years, and he ended up in Enid, Oklahoma in 1909, and kind of a bum. And according to the story, one of the Booth family members came through town, through Enid, and was playing at a local theater. And he went to try to see her. And she refused to see him. Probably thought he was just some stage door Johnny. Yeah. And so he goes back to his hotel and hangs himself.
No kidding.
So he committed suicide in 1909. Well, Blankenship, the attorney, had been following him and kept up with him. He goes and retrieves the body and has it super embalmed. I mean, mummified, basically. And tried to interest people and do something with it. Nothing happened, and then it kept changing hands. And finally, in the 1900s, they were carting it around the Midwest as kind of a carnival sideshow attraction. Yeah. And offering $1,000. Now, keep in mind, can you imagine $1,000 in, say, in 1910?
That'd be
a lot of money.
Yeah.
So they offered a $1,000 reward to anyone who could prove that was not the body of John Wilkes Booth. So at one stop, a guy, this was all recorded in an article in the 1930s in Reader's Digest. And so this guy came along there one day and said, I want my $1,000. He said, because that's not Booth. We all know Booth got killed in the barn. He said, I was in a play with Booth, and said one time during practice, we were practicing a sword fight, and we had an accident, and I accidentally gashed him over the right eye. He said, if that's Booth, there'd be a scar over his right eye. So they checked the mummy, and the guy did not get his $1,000 because there was the scar. And then the clincher of it, the thing that sells me, is that by 1933, I believe, I'd have to go check my files, a woman had ended up with this mummified body, this exhibit or whatever. She took it to the Cook County Coroner's office in Chicago, and they autopsied this mummified corpse. And I have a copy of the original Associated Press story, and they said, well, basically, history will have to make its own decisions, but we say, based on 8 known physical abnormalities, that this is the body of John Wilkes Booth. So there you go, another premature report of death.
Can we buy this body, you and I?
I don't know where it is now.
If we could buy it,
that was the last anybody heard of it.
Well, somebody's got it. If we could buy that body in the Derringer, we could retire.
Yeah, you really would have an exhibit, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Oh, they'd put it on TV. It'd be one episode of one show, and then everybody'd forget about it.
You're right. The circuit isn't what it used to be. Yeah. Wow.
The circuit of the circus.
That was a great story. It was amazing.
Oh, hey, what we think we know, we don't know.
No, that's true.
Most of what we think we know, we don't know.
Hold on a minute. We'll be right back in a minute with James. That was a great story. John Wilkes Booth.
Yep. You know what's wild is I've had that in my files for literally for years.
Uh-huh.
Because, well, as I said, I got onto that story while I was working with Star Telegram, so that was pre-1980.
Yeah.
So that was probably back in the early 70s at some point. And I subsequently wrote everything up, gave all the citations, cited the Associated Press, cited, all these clippings, because I went back into the files of the Star Telegram and found a huge file on this George St. Helen and John St. Helen, and also various tidbits about this story regarding Booth. Oh, you ready for this? Yeah. Apparently, when he fled Washington and he passed through the South and through and ended up in Texas, and, it's like I asked the guy who had this autographed picture, I said, well, why didn't your mother turn him in? Why didn't somebody blow the whistle on him? And he just looked at me real funny. He says, you kidding me? He said, down here he was a hero. He'd killed the head Yankee. Whoa. So, yeah, but think about it. Think about it. Anyone who supported the Confederacy, he was a good guy.
Yeah, that's true.
That's why nobody blew the whistle on him. So anyway, as he moved around, there's even some speculation he actually left the country for a while, might have gone to England or maybe some other places, and then came back.
He probably had protection.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think undoubtedly he probably did. But here, how do you like this? Going through Kentucky, he lived in Kentucky for a little while and went under the name of Mars.
No kidding.
M-A-R-R-S. I found that in an old article dating back in the 30s or whatever. And,
that's funny.
Well, it sounds really weird, except my relatives, my dad came from Kentucky, and I had a lot of relatives that were in Kentucky. So back at that period of time, being a Mars around Lincoln County, Kentucky, was about like being a Smith. Nobody, it didn't rouse any suspicion. Nobody thought anything about that.
Was that common, huh?
Yeah, it was that common.
Yeah, but you're not common.
No. Well, I don't know. I guess we all died off at some point. Yeah, I think he had help too. That's another thing. It was another government conspiracy.
Oh, he had to. Of course.
We got the 18 missing minutes of the Nixon White House tapes where he was probably telling what was really going on. Well, there were 18 pages missing from John Wilkes Booth's diary, that probably told who he was truly connected with, probably told about his membership in the Secret Society, Knights of the Golden Circle, and his connection to Edwin Stanton, Secretary of War, and because basically what was happening is that Stanton and some of the other Republican leaders in Washington were feathering their nest by war profiteering, and they were working with some of the Confederate agents, and smuggling contraband, mostly they would bring tobacco north and they'd send medical supplies south, and profiting the whole time, kind of like guns for drugs thing, the Iran-Contra scandal, in our time. And so when I think that they initially were even involved in a plot against Lincoln, but not necessarily killing. They were the radical Republicans, and they wanted to punish the South, for breaking away there at the time of the war between the states. And Lincoln was the one who said, no, let's bind up the wounds, let's treat them like brothers, let's bring them back into the fold, and let's just keep the Union together, blah,
Are those is that true, or are those just one-sided biographers?
No, this is all pretty much based on fact.
Well, you read DiLorenzo's book, right? The Real Lincoln?
Yeah.
What'd you think of it?
Yeah. Oh, I think it's marvelous. I think that's getting close to the real Lincoln.
You go.
See, Lincoln was not that good a guy.
No. He did not like African Americans much.
No. In fact, his famous quote is, he said he wanted to save the Union. He said if he could save the Union without freeing any slaves, he'd do that. And if it meant freeing all slaves, he'd do that. He just wanted to free the Union. His plan was to take the African Americans, ship them to South
Ship them
America.
back. Well, they ship them back.
Or back to Africa.
Marcus Garvey.
Yeah.
See that look, Liberia got its name from American slaves going back.
Right.
That
exactly.
was that's where they went. Liberation Liberia. That's where they went.
That's right. See, and of course that gets slided over. Nobody understands that. So anyway, the plan was some of these radical Republicans led by Stanton were going to kidnap Lincoln, arrange for Booth and his associates, these Confederate agents, to kidnap Lincoln and hold him for ransom and hold him, to try to free Confederate prisoners and a prisoner exchange, things like that.
That would have been interesting.
Same stuff going on today.
Yeah.
And apparently there might have even been an aborted attempt, because there's a strange incident that happened several weeks before Lincoln was shot, where he was traveling in a park in a carriage, and some horsemen approached him, but then some soldiers suddenly appeared, and these guys ran off, and so it was almost like they was a plan, but it never quite worked out. So apparently what happened was that by this time the war was pretty much over with. And I think the radical Republicans said, oh, well, never mind, let's just move on and we'll just profit from the peace. And but Booth and his other diehard Confederates, they said, well, the kidnap plot didn't work, so let's just go for the guy himself. So they had, and as you well know, probably, I don't know how many of your listeners know their history, but it was not a one lone assassin who shot Lincoln. There was a whole conspiracy. Yeah. Seward, the Secretary of State, got attacked at his home and slashed up, but he lived, and there were some others that were attacked. I mean, this was a big conspiracy. In fact, they ended up hanging, I think, 16 people, including the first woman.
Nobody knows this. It was a big deal. And they think it was all people think, if they think at all, is one guy.
I know.
Maybe
and
two.
They tried to perpetrate that whole myth because they don't want people to know that there's conspiracies that actually work. But if we could revive John F. Kennedy, he would tell you that there's big, vast conspiracies that work. Okay, so anyway, Booth,
big ones.
Booth took it upon himself to push the plot forward, and they made this big attack. And then, as far as the accounts of the assassination, unlike the Kennedy assassination, the Lincoln assassination is pretty open and shut. He did get in the theater. He did shoot Lincoln in his box, leap to the stage, injure his leg, shout "Sic semper tyrannis," so end all tyrants, and rushed off and fled. And very strangely, although the town was in lockdown, Washington was in lockdown, he went through the one bridge that was somehow kind of unguarded, and he got away.
Damn coincidence.
Damn coincidence. And
That's
so
right.
I'm sure that Stanton and the radical Republicans who had been mixed up with him and his group were probably sweating cannonballs.
Yeah,
It's
they
like,
were.
holy crap, is he going to spread the word on us? Is he going to talk on us? And so when Sergeant Boston Corbett thought he saw Booth, and he saw a guy who he knew had been an associate of Booth, and that was true, and they caught him in that barn down in Virginia. Well, he slips up and fires through the wall and kills the guy, and the barn set on fire, and they drag the body out, and he said he kind of matches Booth, just ever so vaguely, but not really. But he was with Booth's known companion, so they said, this is Booth. And right now I'm under the supposition that they actually believed at the scene that they had got Booth.
They got him, yeah.
But then when they take Booth's body back to Washington, and Stanton and the other Republican leaders go on board the ship and view the body, and they all go, oh, no, because it's not Booth. But they've already announced that he's dead. Word has spread all across the country that they killed the assassin.
Right.
So it fit perfectly well with their plans.
Interesting.
So they just went along with it.
Was that, we got to take a break here, but did you mention Leland Stanford or Stanton?
No, Seward. No. The Secretary of War was Edwin Stanton.
Stanton, okay. Stanton. All right. Just a second. We'll be right
I'll double-check that as we go through the break.
We got a little shorty. Then we'll come back. We have a little contest for you. Hang on.